Welcome back to the GCN Racing News Show. Coming up this week, with Oier Lazkano provisionally suspended by the UCI and sacked by Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe for anomalies in his blood samples, I'll be looking into how the athlete biological passport works and what this case means for the sport of professional cycling. I'll also wrap up a weekend of top-level cyclocross and a new stage race called the Gravel Burn. This week in the world of racing, we learnt that gravel stage racing has arrived. The inaugural Gravel Burn in South Africa was held over 7 stages last week, with some really big names taking part, such as Tom Pidcock and Ashley Moolman-Pasio. More on that later on. We also learnt that Jonathan Milan won the Singapore Criterium in far from ideal conditions. He got the better of Biniam Girmay and Jasper Philipsen in the sprint to the line. The rain had been so bad earlier in the day that the planned team time trial was cancelled. And finally, we learnt there was a good reason why Oier Lazkano went missing after this year's Paris-Roubaix. Last week, it was announced by the UCI that the Spaniard had been provisionally suspended due to unexplained abnormalities in his athlete biological passport between 2022 and 2024. Back then, he was riding for Team Movistar. He's had his contract with Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe immediately terminated. Now, since there haven't been many cases like this in recent years, I think it's worth a brief explanation as to what the biological passport is. Introduced in 2008, it's mandatory for every professional level cyclist to be a part of the ABP, and as part of that, you are obliged to be part of the whereabouts system too. In that system, you have to give your overnight address and a 1-hour slot between 5 AM and 11 PM each day where you will be at that address. Anti-doping testers can come whenever they want to that specified address, but you only receive a strike if you're not in during that specified 1-hour slot. If you have 3 whereabouts failures or strikes within a 12-month period, whereby you're not in the place you said you were going to be during that 1-hour slot, or you failed to keep the quarterly information accurate or up to date, that will result in a ban of between 1 and 2 years for a first offence. On top of those random tests, you are also required to submit a blood test every quarter, and you can also be tested during races, either because you won or you've been randomly selected that day. All of those tests are then logged in your biological passport, which enables a panel of experts to build up a profile of what is normal for you using statistical and probability algorithms. Kind of like an electronic record of a rider's key biological markers. So it monitors key blood values such as hemoglobin, hematocrit and reticulocyte percentage, which is effectively the number of new red blood cells. And what this allows authorities to do is detect the effect of a prohibited substance, even if they do not directly detect a prohibited substance in the blood or urine samples. If a rider's value deviates significantly and repeatedly from their established baseline or norms, the system is going to flag it. This is a parameter known as the off score. In that case, the data is then reviewed initially by a single anti-doping expert, and if they flag it as suspicious, it then goes to a panel of 3 independent experts appointed by the Athlete Passport Management Unit. All 3 of those experts must be unanimous in agreeing a high likelihood that a prohibited substance or method has been used by that athlete. It should also be noted that if there's an initial red flag, authorities can then target that athlete with additional blood and urine tests to build up an even more accurate picture. Now, in the case of Lazkano, we don't have all the details. However, we can assume that he and his team were notified by the UCI of the detected abnormalities after this year's Paris-Roubaix. That was the last time that he raced, and soon after he deleted his Strava and social media accounts. According to an article on El País, at around the same time, investigators seized his mobile phone and laptop when they took a visit to his home in Andorra. Now, in the interest of balance, I should also point out that Lazkano released his own statement last Thursday, saying that he's never used doping substances or prohibited methods, and that the case is in the hands of his medical legal team. Movistar also issued a statement saying that he never tested positive whilst he was in their team. What happens from here then? Well, Lazkano and his lawyers will argue the case from their side and try to prove his innocence, whilst the UCI will argue their case on the other side. And on that note, their case must be strong. They're not going to go ahead with provisionally suspending a rider unless they are very, very confident that their findings are correct. And not only would it be very costly financially to them, but it would also undermine the whole system. Either way, I would not expect a conclusion to this case for a number of months yet. And I guess the bigger question is what this means for professional cycling as a whole. Well, if the UCI are correct and Lazkano did cheat, then I think we can only take it as a positive, if you'll pardon the pun. It's good that he was caught, and it's a strong message to any other rider who is cheating or considering cheating that there can be very big consequences to pay for that. You could also argue that it's good that there haven't been many of these cases, although the counter-argument to that would be that riders and doctors might be more sophisticated than the testers and so simply aren't being caught. Anyway, let me know your thoughts on this entire subject in the comments section down below. I shall look forward to reading them. Okay, I'm going to move on to the Nedbank Gravel Burn now, that new 7-day gravel race in South Africa. The riders competed over 800 kilometres of pretty unforgiving gravel over the week. The event was a mixture of big names, seasoned gravel pros and amateurs too. In the men's, South African Matt Beers won the opening stages, taking the overall race lead of course with it, but he was pushed close most of the week by Simon Pelot. The penultimate stage was neutralised due to extreme weather, so the Swiss rider started the final stage just 33 seconds down on Beers, and with Hugo Drechou at close to 7 minutes back, the win was going to go to one of those two. In the end, it was quite a comfortable win for Beers. He finished second on that final stage to Travis Steadman, whilst Pelot lost almost 5 minutes to his rival on that one single stage. Drechou held on for third overall. Tom Pidcock appeared to take things relatively easy for most of the week, but he did take a stage win on day 5, which was a summit finish on the Swartjoch Pass. In the women's race, there was a big upset on the final day. Ashley Mormon-Passio went into it with a commanding lead of more than 4 minutes over Melissa Rollins, but lost a huge amount of time with a puncture and broken valve on that final day, losing over half an hour in the process. Rollins also had a puncture on that final stage, whilst 4th place overall going into it, Lauren Stevens crashed, and so against all the odds, Axelie Dubois-Prévost of France managed to overturn a near 9-minute deficit to take the overall honours. She attacked with 30k's to go, soloing to the stage win as well. Dubois-Prévost herself had suffered a puncture on stage 4 and said that she thought the overall win was out of the question, but she was wrong. That was quite the ride, I've got to say. Now, judging by what I've seen online and what I've heard from a couple of people who were there at the event, it was a fantastic one. So congratulations to the race organisers, and I've no doubt it will be even bigger and better in 12 months' time. In Cyclocross, we had 2 rounds of the X2O Trophy at the weekend, including the infamous Koppenbergcross on Saturday. In the men's, Thibaut Nace wasted no time putting the hammer down. He went clear of all the others on just the second lap of racing, but he was never able to fully relax. Cameron Mason finished just 21 seconds behind the European champion, and he was a long way clear of 3rd place Pim Ronhaar, who finished at 1 minute 44 seconds. And given that the series is based on cumulative time rather than points, it meant there were some huge gaps already after just one round. However, the gaps the following day at the Rapencross in Lokeren were far bigger than most had expected given the nature of the course there, and Nace had an absolute nightmare from start to finish. Crashes, mechanicals, you name it, he had it. So he finished 15th yesterday, 3 minutes 37 seconds down, and Mason was just 1 place and 30 seconds better off. Meanwhile, at the front, Dutchman Joris Nieuwenhuis barely put a foot or tyre wrong, crossing the finish line 48 seconds clear of Michael van Turenhout in second, and so it's Nieuwenhuis who now leads the overall standings. Mason is second at 40 seconds, Art's third at 41, whilst Nace is down to 4th at 49 seconds. I don't think anybody was expecting that at the start of the day, not least Nace himself. In the women's, we had the same winner to both races. Lucinda Brandt was pushed very hard by young Célia Guéry on the Koppenbergcross on Saturday. In fact, on the last lap, it very much looked like the French woman might get back on terms, but Brandt had enough to hold her at bay. It did really hurt her though, judging by the way she looked as she crossed the finish line. However, she recovered brilliantly, backing that up with another win the following day, that time 17 seconds in front of Marion Norber-Ribeirol, who outsprinted Sara Casasola for second. And that leaves Brandt exactly 2 minutes clear of Casasola in the overall standings, while Guéry is down to 4th. She didn't take part in yesterday's race and so got a 5-minute penalty. But Brandt has started just as she left off last year really. She's competed in 5 races so far this season, winning 4 of them and finished second in the other one. Cyclocross continues this weekend with the European Championships, which take place in Middelkerke in Belgium, which feels like a good time to remind you that you can watch a full season of bike racing live on Discovery Plus or Max. In other news, former world champion Rui Costa has announced his retirement from the sport after 17 years as a pro rider. He also won 3 stages at the Tour de France and took 3 overall victories at the Tour de Suisse amongst 33 career wins. Zoe Bagstedt will be forced to miss the first part of this cyclocross season after breaking both wrists in a training crash last week, so we wish her all the best in her recovery. The Tour of Colombia has been cancelled in 2026 due to funding issues, and that's a real shame. That race looked to have one of the best atmospheres of any throughout the season, so hopefully it will make a return in 2027. There are still some big transfers being announced even this late in the year. The biggest name over the last week was that of Sam Bennett, who's going to leave Decathlon 82R to join Q36.5, but as one Irishman enters, another one leaves. Rory Townsend, winner of the C Classic Hamburg back in August, is moving over to the Unibet Rose Rockets for the next 2 seasons, which is another good signing for them. Jonathan Lastra has signed for Euskaltel Euskadi after 3 years at Cofidis, whilst the French squad have signed Eduardo Zamparini from the folding Arkea B&B Hotels team, as well as Hugo Page from Intermarché. The other signing, which came just a little bit too late for last week's racing news show, was that of Benoit Cosnefroy. The French puncher is going to be a UAE Team Emirates rider as of the 1st of January. He's been with Decathlon 82R since the start of his professional career, all the way back in 2017. Right, that's all for another week. Thanks as ever for watching. I'll see you again next Monday.